But you wear a red shirt that says, I'm not from.
Yeah.
I don't work here.
But that's what I mean though. You know that in Walmart, guess what? You find somebody with a blue shirt, 9 times out of 10 they do work there, but they don't know what you're talking about.
It's a blue shirt and khaki pants or brown.
Right. So all I'm saying is there's a uniform. And it's an important uniform. It's one that we have to start associating with, otherwise we don't get to fill that role. This is a requirement before any of the job starts happening. Could he enter the Holy of Holies without that? No. And it said he would die if he didn't. If he didn't have it on, he would not live. Moses kind of liked his brother Aaron, so he's like, you need to wear this thing. I'm sure they had a fight every morning for him to put it on, but you know. Like me and the boys this morning trying to get their socks on. I don't know what it is about socks. They just don't like them. And then they get them on, and then they get in the car, and then they're off within a second. It's like, okay guys, there's a reason for these things. What's the reason for the shoes? So that they don't hurt their feet when they go outside. What's the reason for no shoes here? To hold the ground. How often did the tabernacle move?
Never got wanted to.
Whenever God told them to. But guess what? That ground was always holy.
Wherever he puts his name.
That's right. That's awesome. That's all right. That's awesome. But that's why we have to start associating with, okay, the curious girdle. Guys, I know girls aren't sexy and all that kind of stuff, but got to wear a curious girdle on this thing. That serves a purpose. Why? What purpose could it serve? What purpose could it serve? Keep the trousers on? I like that one. I like that. It's suck the back, support the back, you know.
I don't think it's quite the same kind of girdle.
No, I know it's not. Actually,
it's more of a belt.
Actually, in my finding, it says that it was part of the covering of the nakedness. Okay? What it actually did was it closed everything in. Okay? Not held everything in. It closed everything in. Okay? It's what actually was an attachment. Now, who in here has worn a rope belt before because your pants falling down?
Oh.
I was on a job site not too long ago. My belt, I didn't have it. Don't know why, but ripping my pants. Guess what? I had to have a belt. I went and got some rope. It worked just fine. Curious girdle here was the same thing, though. It wasn't just out of, oh, I don't want to drop my drawers. It was because he had to be held together. He had to be complete. Okay? The bells and the pomegranates. What purpose did they serve?
They let him know when he's coming.
Part of its beauty, God said it would be for beauty also.
Absolutely. I was glad somebody brought that up. The actual garments of the priests had 3 purposes. 3. One, and the first and utmost, was for glory. All right? It was for glory. It was for that association with God. 2 was for beauty. Why? Why would God want things beautiful? Well, I don't know. You ever looked outside?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He likes beauty. Okay? What was the 3rd thing? Huh? I'm sorry? Function? Okay. All right. I'll go with you on that. Something else I'm looking for.
Consecration.
Consecration. It was that functionality of being separated. Okay? Because not everybody got to wear this.
Mm-hmm.
And even the priests that were learning to be the head priests, that were coming into that role, guess what? They didn't wear this. They wear a lot like it. Why? Why were they consecrated? Why were they separated?
In case something happened to him.
Okay? That's one role. The other role is because they had to do everything else. They were the ones that actually had to tend the lamp. You think that Aaron tended the lamp? I don't think he actually tended the lamp. I think that his sons tended the lamp. Okay? I think Aaron's job was a little bit more in that high pay scale. You know what I mean? It doesn't say he didn't. It doesn't say he did. I'm giving you my opinion here.
So actually he attended the Ark of the Covenant.
Right. He attended the ark. He attended God. Okay? What he did was he was the minister unto God. The other priests weren't. It doesn't say that their role was to minister unto God. It said that they were the ones to tend everything else. They were the ones to make sure the showbread was laid out on the table. They were the ones to make sure that everything was coming in. When could a regular person in the congregation meet with God?
He brought his offering. When he brought his offering.
When he brought his offering, what did he do?
He created he gave it to the priest. I mean, he laid his, whatever, put his hands on it or whatever he did, but then it was given to the priest, but who just ministered for that person between, interceded, if you will, but performed the function that, if you will, brought God out to.
All right, let me ask this question. When could a singular person of the congregation, not of the family of Levi, not in the priest's role, ever meet with God without the help of a priest?
No, never.
Okay, that wasn't going to happen.
They
Not after this was established.
facilitated that,
Right.
the meeting with.
Because what had to happen? We know that going through the temple, those steps were so important. What had to happen? The offering had to be brought. Doesn't matter if it was a peace offering, a sin offering, what it was. The offering had to be brought, okay? And they had to be right. They had to be right in here for this to work.
Yeah, it says otherwise go back and.
Right, right. And then this had to be right. Okay, you got to understand, there were people out there with the calves and with all the other kind of stuff, and they've got them, and they're like, okay, I need this one. Here's my money. Let me take this one. I need to meet with God. That's pretty cool. But anyway, so they've got to do that role, right? And so they take it to the altar, and then they hack it up. They do whatever they need to be done, right? There were different roles for every offering. But they laid it out, and then it was burning. Okay? Then the priest has to go back. Where does it go next? It goes to the laver, right? Why? To wash off the sin. He's got to wash off the fact that he just touched everything in this world. He touched the sin of that person. He touched the fact that it was just another person because they weren't consecrated. Okay? So there's the mentions of those. I'm just bringing the point. It's important for us to know this. How many of you went to the temple? How many of you have been to the temple? None of us physically have been to a temple. None of us physically have been to the tabernacle. But every time you go to prayer, you better be going to the tabernacle. You better be going in. You better be walking out the steps. And you better be offering up the right sacrifice. And you better be doing the right things. Why? Because if you don't, it's folly. He'll spit you out. We'll talk about that later. But anyway, I'm sorry. I get kind of worked up in this because it changes the entire focus. When should we go to God for things? Let me ask. When should we go to God for things? Everybody's got a different opinion. Your opinion's fine. I'm just letting you know my opinion is a little different. Now, why? Because I've been going through this. And I'm actually seeing that, guess what? I don't need to be so focused on what my needs are. I got to be focused on what His needs are. Why? He gives me everything else. When this is right, this is great. I've got no problems here. Do you know my relationship with God makes my wife and I have an actual wonderful relationship?
Yes.
I don't have to talk to her, and it becomes wonderful. It's true. I do this right, He works it out. She's been doing that a lot, and it's been working out. So all I'm trying to say is you've got to start understanding my position on it has changed. Because I can associate, you've all heard of the sins of the father, right? Passed on into the generations and the sons and all these kind of things. And I promise you I've got a point in this with what we're talking about. But I can actually track back every single sickness of my kids to my sin. I can track back the fact that Garen was in the hospital for 5 days because of my sin. And you know what? That scares the crap out of me. Because it hurts them. I can see the bad decisions that I've made and the hurt that I've done in this relationship and how it's affected everything else. And you know what's a great litmus test? Is that if I talk to Randy Kane and something's wrong, I need to go back here. Because why? I'm now in a different role. I've taken on what Yeshua told me to take on, and being part of that kingly priest. I'm to take up my cross and walk with Him, right? I'm supposed to suffer. But at the same time, I'm also supposed to take on the priestly role, which was pretty dang cool. I mean, you got to look at it. What he's wearing is a lot of gold, probably pretty heavy. All right? But beyond that, he was the most ordained person, or ornate, there we go, I couldn't get the word out. He's the most ornate person in all of the children of Israel. And that was a cool thing. We like being different. That's what's preached now. Be different, be different, be different. I'm not telling us to do that. I'm just saying that we like that role. And now when we get to actually associate with this, we get to be different. When you get to wear the tribes on your chest, you're different. Why? Because now you're bearing their sin. Now you bear the sin of your brothers. That's a scary thought. But it's one we need to take on. I need Phil to know that I've got his back. He can come to me with anything. And then I'm going to judge him when I need to. And he's going to judge me when I need to. And he does very well. He does very well. Okay? Jim knows this already. Andrew's figuring it out. You know? But that's the role we're supposed to take on. That's what is here. These, when I'm telling you that they walked in with the onyx stones on their shoulders, I get your point with Joseph bearing all that weight. Guess what? Now that his role is to minister to God, he's got to take in the entire nation upon him to go into God. That's a big thing. It wasn't a light load. Because there's a lot of screw-ups. There's a lot of screw-ups in my family. I'm one of them. But that's my point, is that he's carrying in the weight. He's bearing that weight here. And then he's got to bear it here so that he makes sure that his heart is right when he goes in. Because who in here thinks that he had problems with people? A few. I think he had a few problems with some people.
2 less.
2 less. You're right. Did have 2 less problems there. Yes, ma'am.
Is that why Yeshua might have said that his yoke was easy and his burden is light, because he took all of that weight for every person? I really have a hard time with that one, because we tend to think that means that life's going to be easy for us and we're going to have problems. I think that more fits what he's talking about.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, here's the thing: when you have Superman on your side, who can meet you up? Nobody. Okay. That's why it says that actually with God, through God, anything's possible, right? It does say that. Why does it say that? It's because he did take on that burden. He's gotten it all out of the way. Do we still have to take it on? Yep.
We still have to press the olives and make the oil.
That's right. We got to beat them. We got to crush them. We got to do all those things to them to press it out and get it out. Do you know there's not a whole lot of olive juice in an olive? I mean, if you get a fresh one off a tree, when I was in California, I actually took a couple fresh ones out of a tree. I pitted them right quick, and I pressed the best I could out of them. And guess what? There's not much olive oil coming out of those things. So it just makes me realize the immense amount of olives they had to go through to crush all that. If this lamp is going to be burning day and night forever, that's a lot of work. I'm sorry?
You think it's burning now?
Well, it's burning in us. It's burning in heaven. We know that it's pictured. It's the picture of what's going on in heaven, so it's burning there.
Use that light.
That's right.
Use it from the Father right now.
That's right. So it's absolutely burning. Now, what's going to happen when he comes back?
Be here.
I don't have this idea of a spiritual mumbo-jumbo of what's to come. I have an idea that when it lays out what's going to come, it's going to actually be real. We're going to touch it. We're going to step on it. It's going to be real. And so I have a picture that it's going to be the same way. Why? Because he says it that. He says this is what's going to happen. Yeshua's going to come in through what gate? The east gate.
Right.
Which gate is the only gate that will not be shut? I'm just saying, that's my point. It's all laid out in such a real picture. Why? Because it's fantasy. That's what I was taught my entire growing up.
It's the order of the way he's
That's right. And that's why this is so important. Because guess what's going to be reestablished? Ezekiel lays out for us that the Levitical priesthood will be reestablished. Not established, it's not what it says. It says reestablished. Well, that means that they're going to have one of these again. Now, does that negate your role as a kingly priest? Nope. Not at all. In fact, it heightens your role, I think. But this is important. So, I'm sorry, I'll get to my notes now. I get off kind of a kick because it's never made sense to me. Why am I learning about a piece of hardware I'm never going to wear? Doesn't make any sense. Well, it's because I was using it as something I needed to wear instead of something I had to put on and step into. Okay? And that's the role we have to put on and step into.
Todd, can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a correlation between the high priest and the bride?
Yes, and the correlation is that the high priest marries the bride because we know Yeshua is our high priest. Okay? But what is he marrying? He's marrying a priestly nation. Right? That's what he wants. He calls for a priestly nation. So
they're both priests?
yes. But there's a high priest and then there's priests. And we cannot confuse those roles. Because there again, it's all in the way it lays it out. It lays out that there's the high priest and Aaron is his name. He was the first. You know, he got the great honor of being the first. He got to be that first one to walk in behind that veil and go, you do this wrong, you're dead. Like, appreciate that, you know?
I bet he didn't sweat.
I bet he did sweat.
So the high priest represents Yeshua, not us.
I'm sorry?
So that picture of the high priest represents Yeshua, not us.
Yes, and the reason it is because he's in heaven right now doing that job. What are we doing here, though?
We are the body.
Hmm?
Facilitating.
Well,
Well, the 10 virgins are going to have oil
I mean, I think a couple things that need to come into it in relation to your question are, one, it's why he makes the distinction between the two priesthoods, the Melchizedek priesthood and the Aaronic priesthood, and makes that distinction because, yes, he will be the high priest in that order, in the Melchizedek order of priests. When he returns, the Aaronic priesthood, the Levitical priesthood, will be reestablished. But he gives us the difference in that in one there is sin, in one there isn't. You know? And so, in being in the
When
order...
he comes back, though, how much sin do you think is going to be
Well,
in
I
there?
mean, that'll be a real interesting twist on what the purpose of the priesthood is, but it will be there. I mean, he says the priesthood will be there.
Oh, absolutely. The priesthood will be.
Right.
But that's what I'm saying is that when we make that distinction, though,
I don't know that it spells that out, though. So,
well, when we look at Ezekiel, it does spell it out.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
The high priest had his specific duties, and Yeshua is covering those duties.
Right.
We as priests are like the other priests.
Right.
Their duties were to tend to the lamb, to
Right.
tend to the bread of presence, to tend to the sacrifice, and to teach the law.
Right.
That's what we are
What our
supposed
job
to
is.
do.
Great. Thank you for pulling that out. Because who here's a father? Raise your hand, proud and loud. Come on. Proud and loud. Your role is to teach your children and your family the Word of God. Absolutely is your role. I'm sorry. When things overlap, it's important. It's important to note that if we have that kind of role, that means that we are just as the priests. Women, okay? Mothers. I'm going to put mothers. Mothers, what is part of your glory? What do you find glory in raising your children, right? Teaching them the way of the Lord. That's right. So that's my point. You take on that priestly role as well. So I'm making that correlation that we have to understand. What was the first priesthood? First priesthood. Sorry? Melchizedek priesthood. What are we in right now? Melchizedek priesthood. What were they in when this was established? Aaronic priesthood. What happened to the Melchizedek priesthood
What happened to the Melchizedek priesthood?
when this came about?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing happened to it.
It wasn't
They're
forfeit.
concurrent.
They worked concurrent. Why? Because it wasn't up to the priest to teach the entire nation and keep them in remembrance of the law. That was the job of the parents.
Oh.
That was the job of each individual person of the congregation. When they said, anything you say, we will do, they took on that role. And then they blew it and built a calf. And then Moses came in and he said, all right, who's going to step up? Levi and his people step up. Woohoo! And they killed 3,000 people and they go, okay, you're my priests. I like that kind of picking, you know? Who do you go with when you pick priests? You go with the strongest. Why? Because they're going to take a lot of crap. They're the ones having to take it on. They're the ones that are getting all the questions. They're the ones that are going, why aren't these people getting this right? And I got to be honest, I'm going to throw out a controversial statement. I think that's when they decided we need to start making this thing more profound. And that's when they started adding to it.
And I think one of the things we need to remember is, we just think of the Levites as the teachers of the law and the ones who did the work. Well, God could have said, no, I just want 4 people to do the work. But he had a whole tribe. And in that, he had a whole tribe of men who were encouraging, uplifting, and challenging each other to keep doing their position. And we have to remember, we're not alone.
Right.
No man is an island unto himself.
No man's an island.
Amen.
But that's also why we take on the breastplate, because we have to associate with every single person. That's why I'm so glad that the guys got together and decided that we needed to change things up a little bit. Who in here feels like we get to actually talk to real people when you're in this room?
Yes.
I get to deal with people all week long that aren't real. They're not real. They put on this facade that absolutely makes me sick. Absolutely makes me sick. And if you're not careful, you're around those people too, you start doing the same thing. That's why it's so encouraging that we get to do that with this fellowship. Because that's where we get to actually fall in love with y'all. We have to do that. Michael, you and I, we got to be good buds, man. It's important. And it's not because of my salvation and your salvation. It's because I need to help you with your salvation. You need to help me with my salvation. Why? Because it's a journey. And we're not done yet. Phil and I are getting pretty close. We need to spend more time together, but we're getting pretty close. Why? It's because he can help me along that journey. He's got to. Mary, you're on that list too. So understand it. You and I got to get closer. Jamie and I love this woman. You and I got to get a little bit closer though. Jim already knows how I feel about him, so I'm not even talking to him. Shirley, you're the same way. Everyone in here. Why is that important? It's because we are creating what? We're creating this.
In that statement, so we're creating the ability to judge,
Absolutely, in righteous judgment.
right? Each other.
You know what? I got judged this week by a brother, and it sucked. It really did. But you know what? It was a God thing. It really was. It felt good afterwards. Not during, but afterwards. Because I actually got to go, I'm making that mistake. And I stepped back, and I got to repent. And I got to go, Yahweh, thank you for showing this to me through a brother. And I was blessed, beyond measure. And guess what? I went home, Randy K and I were better. I'm telling you, this isn't magic trick anymore. He laid it out. This isn't a fairy tale anymore. This isn't a story that we can't understand. This is what he laid out so that we would actually be on the right page. We need to be on that right page. Y'all are gonna love my costume, by the way, tonight. I'm so excited.
I have a question, and it might be kind of off of what you're talking about, but
Give
I'm
it to me.
kind of confused right now.
Okay?
Okay, because I'm listening to you talk, and I went to church up until I was a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
and like how you're explaining it, and like I always complain, and like you hear a lot of women complaining, thinking that we have it hard, you know, like we have so much on our shoulders, but then like listening to you speak, it's like if you surround yourself with men of God, men are taking on a lot of responsibility. If you like going by the Bible, women really have it easy, and I'm like kind of confused because I'm thinking that it's the woman's role to hold their family together. It's the woman's role to teach her kids to be kids of God or whatever. But in all reality, I guess because I'm not reading my Bible anymore, I'm really not. I'm like what you're saying is like I'm like really amazed. Like I got it so easy.
Let me tell you, you're never going to hear from me that you got it easy. You're never going to hear from me that women got it easy. That's a big mistake. If any man tells you about that, all right?
At least if it gets back to Randy.
But what you will hear me say is that I can make your burden easier. Why? Because we're a congregation. You know, have you ever heard the term "all tides raise"? Tide raises all ship.
The rising tide raises
All ships. I knew I was saying it wrong. The rising tide raises all ships. Okay. Picture us as that tide, okay? Or you're that boat, and we're that tide. And if we're doing pretty good, and we're going up, and you're in the middle of that boat, are you going to be going up? Absolutely. If we're all having a better relationship with God than we were 3 months ago, that's going to affect people that are not having a great relationship with God. You know, when people start coming to a church, or when they start coming to a fellowship, is when they start seeing people be different.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
I can't say that because there's my living proof right there.
There you go.
And since she's been coming to this group, me and Shanice do not bump heads anymore.
And we normally don't get along. We
And
can get along
sometimes we
before
don't
the
agree. And she, you know, I'm
Sure.
still mom, and I don't care if you're 50 years old. I'm still voicing my opinion. But since she's been coming here and her seeing me come home, and she like, you act like nothing bothers you anymore. It don't.
That's great.
When I leave you guys, man, I go home and it's like, I feel like I'm just glowing. And I guess Shanice knows that, and since she's been coming here, man, we don't bump heads, but that oldest one of mine, she bumps heads with me and Shanice.
Okay, I'll tell you this.
All the time.
It's not like, and I don't like to say, I feel like in our family, like the little family that we do have, and I know it might be bad for me to say this, but I feel like the demon is in my sister because she's always mad. If things don't go her way, it's like everything is got to be, it's like, it's bad. She's like so evil and she does the meanest stuff if stuff doesn't, and I feel like the demon is in my sister and I don't like to say that.
Well, my parents think I'm demon possessed too. Look, I'm not saying it's going to be bed of roses because it's not. It's not supposed to be. And if it is, we're doing something wrong.
I
mean,
mean,
it's the
me
truth
and
of it.
Shanice, we have a better understanding.
Right, and that's
We
the point.
seriously do. We have,
That's the point. That's why we have to come to this role. Okay? We have to come into a better relationship with each other. Why? It's so that we can help each other up, right? Okay, yeah, okay. But it's also so what? That we can be a light to the world. We have to be that light into the world. That's what he called us to be. And, yes?
That's kind of a weird question. As, I don't know, as they're making the sacrifices, I mean, they would have to get really dirty.
Absolutely.
So, did he have a lot of robes? Or just one that got washed? I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Well,
You have the same question?
Well, when they consecrate, he sprinkles the blood on his robes.
yeah, they sprinkle the blood on his robes when they consecrated him, so. I think it'd get pretty rank if he didn't have more than one, to be honest. But,
Yeah, but in the used roads, they would use tonight.
right.
I just wanted to say that you're saying that your life is better as you're walking.
Absolutely.
But for us, we find that we've been persecuted more
Sure.
with the devil and more aggressive in our relationship, so there's more struggle for us.
Oh, no.
Some people tell us that it's so good and so wonderful since they got into it, but I'm thinking, oh, I'm doing something wrong
Well,
because.
no, here's the thing. Here's the thing.